Hello, I'm Dr. Annadale from Mount St. Mary's University in Emmitsburg, Maryland, and today I want to review a sample philosophy paper that was put online by Angela Mendelovici of the University of Western Ontario in 2010. I think Mendelovici gives some good advice for philosophy student papers, and I want to review some of it with you right now. Scrolling down, we see the paper that she put online begins with a title. The title, she says, should be nothing fancy, no need to be cute, just a title. And I can second this and recommend that you not try to be witty or make a pun in your title. Simply make the title a clear statement of exactly what you're trying to do in the paper. Beneath that, all required information. If the professor wants a particular format or word count or student number, be sure to include that. That's just elementary direction following. And the introduction to the paper. Again, nothing fancy. Tell the reader what the paper's about, provide a roadmap, and conclude with your thesis. It's never a bad idea for a beginning philosophy student to begin a paper by stating, in this paper I will argue that, and follow it up with the conclusion you intend to argue for. Scrolling down further, we see that in the second paragraph, Mendelovici begins to set the context and background that's necessary for understanding her argument. She actually spends the first third of the paper doing this. This can be hard. You need to be selective about what to include, and the way you express yourself about the material will help to establish for the reader, for the professor, that you know the area that you're talking about so that your thesis can make some sense. She does include a quote. It's important not to quote too much at length in this initial part of the paper. You want to both quote and give examples and paraphrase the author, express the context and meaning of what you need to get on the table in your own words. Farther down, Mendelovici is still advancing towards her thesis, and she brings us down here. She notes, I'm still explaining Frege's view, but she's road mapping now. She mentions at the end of this paragraph on the second page, I'm not going to address all of Frege's arguments. Instead, I will examine this argument. This is the writer's way of signaling to the reader that the reader can expect certain things from what's to come. Looking further down the paper now, Frege's argument is represented, even though she disagrees with it, with clarity and fairness. She tries to give the strongest possible statement of this argument without pulling any punches or distorting anything. She does use an example to explain it, and goes on to explain the example. And then at the top of the next page, trying to explain Frege's argument explicitly, she does write it down in premise, conclusion form. As she notes, this can be overkill, although you can always do this in your notes when you're preparing to write a paper. This does allow her, though, to say that she's not going to disagree with premise 1 or with the validity of the argument that connects the premises to the conclusion. Instead, she says explicitly, my disagreement will be with premise number 2. This tells the reader exactly where the disagreement between Mendelovici, the author, and Frege, the philosopher she's engaging, will come. And it's only at this point, more than halfway through the paper, that we get the beginning of the actual argument that the student is presenting for her thesis. She's trying to use clear, controlled language and examples. Take a look at the way the sentences of this paragraph work out. This line of reasoning is mistaken, she says. I will accept P1, I will disagree with P2. I claim that, even if senses were private, etc. This is because. Then she gives an explanation of this claim she is making, and she follows it up with an example. Suppose you, she goes on to explain the example, and to consider the example in the context of her initial claim. She's using this to try to communicate her claim, again with more examples, to the reader. She comes at the end of this long argumentative paragraph to restate her conclusion. Therefore, because of what I have said, premise 2 is false, and she states what she takes that to mean. Successful communication and joint scientific pursuits do not require public senses, and because premise 2 is false, Frege's argument fails. And then she says, I assess the overall damage to Frege's position. This is another way of setting limits around the thesis that she has established. She notes that her argument does not establish that senses are in fact ideas, but only that one of Frege's arguments against that point of view has not succeeded. She then goes on to raise and consider a possible objection to her argument. This is an important thing to do in a philosophy paper. Notice the structure of this paragraph. Frege might respond that. My response is that. And she actually if you look at the content of this, you'll see that Mendelovici actually is engaging with the substance of this hypothetical objection that she is raising to her paper. And she tries to show that it is not an effective response to her argument. Her conclusion is a paragraph of only 3 lines, short and sweet, as she says. I think that's good advice. It simply states, I have argued that. This parallels the opening claim in the introduction. In this paper, I will argue that. And it brings home to the reader again the conclusion that the strongest of Frege's arguments against this claim will fail. At that, the paper comes to an end. She does note that at the end, you should make sure you format the bibliography in the way that your professor calls for. Some professors don't care, but some do. Make sure you follow directions in that regard. So that is Angela Mendelovici's paper on Frege, which she presents as a sample philosophy paper. I hope that you found her analysis of it and my review of that analysis helpful. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.